Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Birth and Baby Talk. As you may have noticed, it is not our usual day to be doing this. I am the doula who was out and about this week helping a family welcome a new baby to the world. And by out and about, I mean at home because virtual support and a pandemic. But I really didn't want to skip this week. I think this is a super important topic, and it is something that is more and more relevant, especially during this period of time when families don't have as much sort of external help. Grandparents aren't as available, aunts and uncles aren't necessarily available, people aren't traveling. So we are going to talk about siblings today. I guess I should probably have remembered to introduce myself, but if you guys have been following along, you know I'm Meaghan, and I am one of the owners of Toronto Family Doulas, Hamilton Family Doulas, and Family Doulas of Ottawa. Now, if you don't know me and you're not familiar with my background, before I was a doula, I actually worked in special needs and early childhood education, behavioral therapy, and a lot of transition work with families. So this is something I have been passionate about my entire professional career, even before I started working primarily with new and expecting families. So I love talking about this. This is something I really love touching base with new parents, or with second-time parents on, because it's a very different experience than your first. And I was having this conversation with a client recently. You know, your first pregnancy, you can take a nap if you're tired. You can go to bed at 6 o'clock if you want. If your laundry doesn't get folded and put away, it doesn't really matter. Second time around, you have a whole other small human being that you are responsible for, but also who wants your attention and wants your time and wants you to be around. And so those naps and those breaks and that time, that downtime to think and dream and prepare and read for your new baby doesn't always happen the same way the second time. And then you bring your second baby or your new baby home, and you still have this other small person who's depending on you for food and clothing and sleep and all of these things, and they still want your time, and so does your baby. So this week, all of our really specific tips have gone out in the newsletter. So if you are not signed up for that, make sure you are. We will drop the link in the comments below, but we want to make sure that you get those tips. Sort of pulling back from the very specifics, there's 3 things I like to talk to parents about when they are welcoming a new baby. The first is to involve your older child. So even if your oldest is 18 months, even if you're preparing for 2 under 2, doesn't matter the age. And this is actually going to even be true next week when we talk about 5 to 10-year-olds. Involving your older child really helps to give them a sense of, this baby is part of my family. This baby is my sibling, my little brother or my little sister. Give them some sort of ownership over that relationship and really encourage this feeling of, you are the big sibling. You are there to help. You're going to teach him everything that they know. We tell this to, even just as a parent, I tell this to my oldest all the time, is your little brother thinks you walk on water and that you are a superhero. And so, sometimes we talk about this big responsibility that comes with being a superhero big sibling. So really getting them involved, and that's going to be different. It's going to be age appropriate. So, with a 2-year-old, you might say, oh, hand mommy the diaper. Or my favorite is favorite because it's funny to watch sometimes, but also maybe put the box up where it's out of reach when you're not observing, is getting them to pull the wipes out of the container. And I say put it up high because especially the 2 and 3-year-olds will just sit and they will pull them out until you have a floor covered in wet wipes and nothing left in the container when your baby blows out their diaper. But little things like that can be super helpful. Yeah, help me put the pacifier in the baby's mouth. You get if you've got the little bit older, the 4 and 5-year-olds, these are the kids. They want the breastfeeding pillow in their lap, and they want to hold their sibling. This is a huge moment. This is where, those really fun, special, lovely pictures come in. And make sure you check out our previous episodes on taking those pictures right now at home so that you can really capture those special moments between siblings. But you really want to give them things that they can do to participate. That way, when you have to be focused on your baby, your toddler or your older child is still in the room, being supervised, engaged in an activity, talking to you. You're still really having time with them while also being with and taking care of your baby. The second thing I want to talk about is making sure that your older child also has time where there is no baby. And I recognize that right now this is a lot more complicated than it used to be. And a big piece of this is also just sort of maintaining routines. So if dad is the one who does bath and bedtime stories every night, that needs to continue. You can't, as much as I get it, moms, by the end of the day, we are touched out. The cluster feeding needs to stop. We want to, pass off our baby and take a shower and have 20 minutes to ourselves, but you may need to delay that just a little bit until, those normal bedtime routines can be taken care of. If your routine is, walking the dog, in non-pandemic times, if your routine is swimming lessons or soccer or hockey or Girl Guides and Beavers and all of those things, keep and help make sure that those continue to happen. And also just find times, even if it's only 15 minutes, where it's just you and your older child. Check in about how they're feeling, how they're doing, snuggle them, tell them you're proud of them for being, gentle with their sibling, that you're proud of them for being a big helper, and really sort of acknowledge and recognize the ways that they are contributing, because we all thrive on positive feedback. That's true for me, that is true for you, and it's going to be true for your children. And so for older siblings who, this is a whole new experience for them, they really, even if you prepared them and you read books and they seem excited, the reality of a baby being in the house can be very, very different than what they were thinking leading up to the baby coming home. And, babies cry and fuss and smell at times, and your toddler is going to tell you all of that, and they are going to be super annoyed by the baby crying all the time. And that's okay. It's going to happen. But by giving them times when it's just you, there's no baby in the room, even especially if the snow ever goes away and spring ever comes, get out of the house, go in the backyard, go down the street to the park, go for a walk with the dog, whatever it is, give something to your child that is completely theirs. It's their special time with you. Maybe it's every Saturday morning you take them out for breakfast and they get a fancy hot chocolate or, pancakes or whatever it is. Find that time. And this is really important for both parents or caregivers, whoever is involved. Each adult in your child's life should have these moments with your child, because I guarantee they had those moments before the new baby came. So by continuing or even creating new special moments and traditions, you're giving your child this feeling of continuity and security, because they know that the parts of their life that are really stable will continue to stay stable, even if other things like a crying baby are different. And the third tip that I want to give is, this is probably true first baby or your 10th baby, is adjust your expectations. As a doula, I have worked with families for close to 9 years at this point. And I think the biggest mistake parents make, especially bringing home their second child, but even with their first, is they have this idea that they can do it all, that they can keep a perfectly clean house and they can have super healthy, nutritious meals on the table all the time, and they can, get back to their pre-pregnancy weight, which isn't a thing. Even if you lose the weight, your body has changed. They have this idea that I'm on maternity leave, I can, get all of these other things done. And even if you could do that with one baby, when you've got 2 kids to take care of, it gets a little bit more complicated. So be okay with a messy house. Be okay with ordering in. But most importantly, be okay with the fact that your older child is not always going to be okay. They are going to have days where they are fussing. And I don't mean fussing like a baby fussing. I mean constantly bugging you, asking for your attention, poking at you, throwing temper tantrums, being defiant, chucking their food across the table. All of those behaviors that we're, as parents, we're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my mind. They're going to happen. This is a huge transition in your child's life. Not only do they have a new baby in the house, not only do they have a new role as a sibling, their parents are not just theirs anymore. They have to share their parents. They have to share their aunts and uncles. They have to share their grandparents. They have to share eventually their toys. Sometimes kids, especially in the 4 and 5 range, they'll recognize when the new baby starts to wear certain clothes or use certain blankets or toys that they used once upon a time. Maybe they recognize the clothing from pictures, or, further down the road when they're old enough to remember, some of their hand-me-downs. And they can get super possessive about things they haven't touched in years. It's sometimes quite funny to see. They will do what they can to go back to being the baby because they see the new baby getting all of this attention. And they want that for themselves. And in a way, they even remember, not being the baby, but when they were the sole recipient of your attention. And so really sort of adjusting your expectations of your child's behavior. They're not going to be perfect. They're not even going to be the same kid that they were before you brought the new baby home. And that's okay. You guys will get back to a new normal. You will get back to sort of the behaviors you expected before. A really common thing that we see with older siblings, especially in the 2 to 4 range, is where you need to really sort of adjust your expectations. We often see a regression in potty learning where kids suddenly start having accidents, even though they were perfectly, had no issues prior to the new baby coming, or they'll ask to wear diapers again, which really can, weird out some parents who are like, you haven't worn diapers in a year. What are you talking about? They're really trying to integrate themselves back into that relationship of being your one and only. And obviously they're not your one and only anymore. So you really have to recognize and understand that it's not going to always be smooth. It's not always going to be positive. There are going to be meltdowns and temper tantrums and defiance and food on the ground, and, they're not always going to be gentle with their sibling. It happens, real talk. Older siblings aren't always super gentle with their baby sister, their baby brother. So, you really have to understand and accept that some of those things are going to happen, so that when they do happen, it's not this sudden overwhelming embarrassment or frustration. It's, oh yeah, this was the thing I got warned about. This is the thing that's going to happen. Okay, how do we deal with it? Now, if you've got a little bit of time before your new baby is arriving, you can start to try and think of some ways to mitigate all of that. Whether it, just use, be real, all kids have tantrums. My 8.5-year-old still has tantrums. I still have tantrums. So, really sort of look at their tantrums and take a quick look as they're happening during your pregnancy. What's setting them off and what's calming them down? If nothing is calming them down, find some strategies that work. Go online. There's tons of information about this out there on how to work with kids who are having a difficult time, ways of helping them to calm down. There's some really great for the sort of 4 and 5-year-olds, not so much the 2 and 3-year-olds, but the 4 and 5-year-olds. There's some really good kid aimed calm down meditation tracks that are 5 minutes long, which is the perfect length for kids that age. With younger kids, the 2 to 3, there's some really great TV shows out there that have specific episodes about bringing home a new sibling. The one that gets mentioned in parenting forums all the time is Daniel Tiger. I mean, Daniel Tiger covers everything, but there are conversations in there about having a new sibling come home and what changes are going to happen in the family. And like I said, you can prepare your kids till you're blue in the face, but the reality of it is going to be super different. So, giving them tools to manage upset and frustration, and then reminding them of those new tools when the baby arrives will really give you sort of a step up on managing some of those behaviors when the new baby comes home. And I think, it's not one of my top 3, but the biggest piece of advice, just sort of let it happen. It's all going to take time. It will come back together. It's going to feel chaotic in the first, 6 to 8 weeks. And the funny thing is, you probably don't remember it, but it felt that chaotic in the first 6 to 8 weeks with your first 2. There's a reason we don't remember a lot of the first 6 to 8 weeks, and that's because probably we'd all be only children if we did. So really just sort of understand that the first 6 to 8 weeks, it's not just a transition for your baby to the outside world. It's not just a transition for you to be a parent of 2. It's a transition for your child. It's a transition for your family. It's a transition for your wider village, grandparents, aunts and uncles, family, friends. If they're ever allowed to visit again, their relationship will change, because we all know what happens when somebody walks into a room and there's a toddler on one side and a brand new baby on the other, and everybody zooms in on the brand new baby. That's going to affect your older child too. So give yourself time, give yourself grace, give your child grace. Know they're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad days. And sometimes those bad days are going to be the same day, and it's just going to be a mess. And that's the day you order in pizza, because that is the day that adding anything else to your plate is just too much. Thank you so much. I hope these tips helped. As I mentioned, we are sending out a newsletter. It has more specific tips, as well as a reading list, both for you and your child, that to help sort of introduce this idea of siblings. And these are all books that I've looked through and vetted and often recommend. So, take a look through our newsletter. If you're not signed up, make sure you're doing that, because I don't know why you're missing all of the free, fabulous information that goes out every week. Next week, I am going to be talking about the older siblings. So when there's a little bit of a bigger gap between your brand new baby and your older child. So the 5 to 10 set has a slightly different sort of approach to things. The language and communication is a little bit stronger. And so there's different ways of approaching life with 2 when your older child is truly a little bit older. So yeah, thank you very much. I kept it short and sweet today because it is a day and a bit short and late. So we wanted to make sure you had these tips and you are ready to go. And we are looking forward to seeing you next week. Thanks, everybody.